These games in 2025 are going to make or break the entire season. The NFL schedule just dropped, so we are going to break it down. 10 games that are going to define this entire thing. At number 10, Chicago Bears in a redemption game against the Washington Commanders. We know all of the story about how it broke down. Caleb Williams first overall, Jayden Daniels second, and everybody's written off Caleb Williams and him not being the right selection for Chicago at number 1. They whiffed again in getting the quarterback right. So how about week 6 on Monday Night Football for the Bears, coming off of the bye week for a chance to redeem taking Caleb? If they lose this game and Caleb's 0-2, like, you start to understand the chatter. Jayden already went to an NFC Championship game, and he would be 0-2 against Jayden, and Jayden would be like, well, like, I should have been taken first overall. You're showing them exactly why you should have been taken. That would be a ridiculous make or break part of the year for either Chicago or Washington. If the Bears came away with a win, then Bears fans can start to relax a little bit, be like, okay, we got a good quarterback, and Washington fans can start to settle down a little bit, come back to earth on what ended up happening with that pick. At number 9, Week 15, Los Angeles Rams at home against the Detroit Lions. We need to talk anything else besides Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford. They switched teams. They faced off the last 2 years, met in the playoffs 2 years ago in a tight game. The Lions pulled it out at Ford Field, and then last year they met week 1. Lions pulled it out again. Are the Rams sick and tired of losing to Detroit? I mean, this one's going to be at their place, likely going to be America's Game of the Week, an opportunity for Stafford and his new wide receiver, who will have a bit more chemistry with, in Devontae Adams, later in the season to be able to pull off what's likely going to be an upset. Los Angeles has the opportunity to be one of the strongest teams in the league. They've drafted so well. And then Detroit looking to really gain momentum. This game could end up being a decider for seeding, for a 2 vs 3 seed or a 1 seed. We know how important that 1 seed is going to be for the playoffs, so maybe it decides who ends up getting that top spot. Let's talk about the Commanders once again. How can we not, with this hot topic team behind Jayden Daniels? They play the Eagles at home week 16. You might be saying, if you've seen the schedule, they play each other week 18, but this matchup, week 16, is the second of 4 divisional games to end the season for Washington. All right, so they're going to need this one, and likely more so than not, this game is going to decide whether or not that week 18 game is even that important. Oftentimes we see games that might look like they're going to be huge, and then teams don't have anything to play for. So this game, week 16, really think that division could come down to the wire, and potentially they might be in a spot where both teams are competing for that number 1 seed again in the NFC. Let's talk about some AFC teams. At number 7, we've got the Baltimore Ravens at home against the Bengals on Thanksgiving night. Week 13, Thanksgiving, everyone's going to have a full belly, some turkey in their stomach, some gravy, some mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, all the potatoes. Joe Burrow and the Bengals, are they going to have an offense that's capable of moving the football against that Baltimore D that saw the likes of Mike Green come to them in the second round? Malachi Starks added to that back end and that secondary for Baltimore. We know what Baltimore's offense is, obviously, with Lamar Jackson and a Derrick Henry re-signed guy that they are bringing back for this season. So we know how good Baltimore is. And this matchup, like Cincinnati, this is a team that they are capable. We saw them go to back-to-back AFC Championship games before that plummeting of their season last year, not being able to get any stops on the defensive side. Because if they're able to have remotely any traction on defense, this is a team that can compete for a Super Bowl. This one could be deciding the shaping up of the division or a tiebreaker for the playoffs. How about the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs, week 14, December 7th? Understand this. Houston plays in the worst division of football, and Houston, because of that, has the ability to start pretty much 5-1 to start the year, a schedule that looks like they could go somewhere between 12-5 to 14-3 and be competing for the 1 seed. We're going to continue to pound it down because that is what's important in getting to the Super Bowl. We know how the Chiefs have been playing all these home games throughout the playoffs. So Texans and Kansas City, this one could be determining who's going to have that seed later in the year, and knowing whether they have to potentially play a road game like Houston had to go to Kansas City last year, and we know how that ended up for them in losing to them. Wouldn't that have been nice if that had that game at home? How about the Green Bay Packers and Philadelphia Eagles Monday Night Football in Week 10? This is another one of those matchups we saw twice last year. So they played in Brazil Week 1, Green Bay losing that game and Jordan Love getting hurt. They end up losing again to them in the wild card round of the playoffs. Philadelphia Eagles, frankly, had a very easy path for much of the season, just being able to coast for the most part. They had a little bit of the turmoil in what was happening with A.J. Brown, besides the stuff with Nick Sirianni getting into it with fans. But the Green Bay Packers playing Philly at home, they need this one. What is Green Bay going to be? Are they competing in the division for the NFC North? Are they going to be going for a wild card? Those matchups within the conference are so important in being able to just get some confidence, because if you lose to Philadelphia again, it's just such a gut punch, being like, is this just what we're going to be? A team that's on that 10-7 caliber, but's not able to beat any quality opponents and elevate ourselves, because that's what Green Bay hasn't been able to do. They've been there, getting to NFC championship games, getting to the playoffs consistently, winning the division, then they get to the postseason, and they seem to fizzle in those big moments. The Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills, Sunday Night Football. I know it's a Week 1 matchup, but this thing could determine the full seeding and where this goes in the AFC. It's Week 1. They're coming out, guns a-blazing. This thing's in Buffalo and Orchard Park, but this could be a tiebreaker for how the season winds up. We don't have any evidence to say that a Week 1 game cannot be the biggest game of a season for these two teams, or one of the biggest games overall, and what's going to make or break the AFC in terms of the seeding. We talked about the 1 seed. We're going to continue to harp on it. This will determine everything for these two teams later on. Buffalo, you think that there's going to be another team coming out that division. We talked about Cincinnati and Baltimore earlier in this video, but when we look at the Baltimore Ravens, they are by far and wide the favorite to win that division. So playing the Buffalo Bills absolutely could shape the AFC and who gets the number 1 seed. Eagles and Lions, we're staying on that point and hitting it home. Week 11, Sunday Night Football. This is a short week for the Eagles after playing Green Bay on Monday Night Football, a game that we talked about a little bit later. So Philly, with all of these big matchups, talked about them playing the Washington Commanders, talked about them playing Green Bay. So the Lions, some of the best teams in the NFC conference. How are they going to match up in each of these games? And all of these big matchups between teams playing within the conference are just as important as the divisional races, because you end up determining where the Eagles play the Lions in NFC Championship game at home or on the road, depending on how this goes if they wind up with the same record. The Bills and the Houston Texans, Week 12 on Thursday Night Football. Typically, those Thursday night games don't seem to be all that hyped on the way that a Sunday night game is, all the stakes on that. But the Thursday games do look very good this year. Buffalo at the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are coming off of what a lot of people called a disappointing season, but frankly, going into this year, they bring in the 2 wide receivers, Higgins and Jayden Noel from Iowa State. Will Anderson's continuing to get better. This is a team pointed in the right direction. The Buffalo Bills, it's all the same with them. They took Maxwell Harrison with that first-round pick, so everything for Buffalo is indicating that they're going to keep this thing moving in the right direction. And the biggest game of the season, Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers, Week 15. The Chiefs are coming off a Sunday Night Football game against Houston, and this is going to determine the division and I think the entire season for both of these teams. We saw Los Angeles last year. They were on the road against Houston in the playoffs, and it was just a fizzle. But what Herbert threw 3 picks all year. He throws 4 in a playoff games against Houston. And for the Kansas City Chiefs, they play Week 1, but we know that Kansas City's a little bit like a wounded lion going into this year. Like the offensive line, they took Josh Simmons at left tackle to shore that up, but losing Joe Thuney in the offseason hurts. That's what happens when you have a quarterback earning so much money and taking up so much space on the salary cap. It's like you're not able to maintain all of these quality players, the likes of Tyreek Hill leaving a couple of years ago, losing L'Jarius Sneed. You understand those losses. They're getting Rashee Rice, hopefully back for this year, and the legal troubles sort themselves out. Xavier Worthy, we saw him in the Super Bowl, so utilizing him. So this is going to determine the AFC West. The Denver Broncos, I think, have another year before that they could fully compete for the likes of that title, LA is right there. They're going to be better. Marion Hampton and Najee in the backfield together. They were able to pick up the wide receiver out of Ole Miss, Trey Harris, adding him to Ladd McConkey. Like, they are coming together on the offensive side of the football fully. Justin Herbert's going to be better with an improved run game. A year or two under Jim Harbaugh is going to be just what they need. You saw the success, and with Michigan, how they continuously were starting to improve. Once they were finally able to knock off Ohio State in 2021, and once they did, the monkey was off their back, and they went on a bit of the run there. The Chargers can do the exact same thing. Once they could beat the Kansas City Chiefs, win that division, there's no reason why they couldn't consistently do that and be competing to win the AFC West every single year. So those are the biggest matchups that will make or break the 2025 regular season. All of these are huge. There's a ton of matchups we don't have on here. Divisional games, other huge games that are going to be defining it, but I don't think that they stack up just as much compared to these. So let me know in the comments whether or not you agree with some of the games on this list. I think there's going to be a couple that everyone can agree with, but there might be a few here and there that you might be thinking, like, that game has a little bit more importance. Obviously, we didn't mention a lot of the rookies like Cam Ward with Tennessee, but I tried to keep this short up really to just the teams that are competing at the highest level towards the end of the playoffs and some of those larger storylines. So appreciate you so much for watching this. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment and feedback for what you want or any videos you would like to see in the future. And I will see you next time. Appreciate you.